Look at the statement. Let phi be a ring homomorphism from R to S. Then the mapping from R to R by the quotient ring R by kernel of phi given by R plus ker phi equal to phi of R is an isomorphism. That is, R by kernel of phi is isomorphic to phi R. Let phi taking from R to S be a ring homomorphism with kernel k phi. What we are saying is R by k phi is isomorphic to S in case phi is onto. If it is into, then it is isomorphic to the image of R under phi. This is the first homomorphism theorem. Let us see what happens in the very special case from the phi is the natural homomorphism from Z to Zn. What is the kernel? We check that the kernel is nothing but Nz. So what does the first homomorphism theorem give us? That Z by Nz is isomorphic to Zn. This is a very important result. Z by Nz is isomorphic to Zn. Okay, not only are kernels ideals, ideals are kernels. Every ideal arises as the kernel of a homomorphism. Look into your PPT. Every ideal of a ring R is the kernel of a ring homomorphism of R. In particular, I is the kernel of the mapping R going to R plus I from R to R by I. Define gamma going from, look into this, define gamma going from R to R by I by gamma of A equal to I plus A. Then what is gamma of A plus B? Gamma of A plus B is I plus A plus B, which is equal to I plus A plus I plus B. That is gamma of A plus gamma of B. So gamma preserves addition. Gamma of AB equal to I plus AB, that is equal to I plus A into I plus B. So gamma preserves multiplication also. So gamma is a ring homomorphism. It is clearly onto because for every element of the form I plus A there is a pre-image in R. So this is a ring homomorphism of R onto I. What is its kernel? We are looking for elements A such that gamma of A is the identity element of R by I, which is nothing but gamma of A equal to I. That is, we are looking for elements A such that I plus A equal to I, that is A belongs to I, or the kernel of gamma is nothing but I itself. So every ideal is the kernel of the canonical homomorphism from R to R by I. You know, look into the PPT, you know what is Zx. What is this notation used generally in our course? This stands for the set of all polynomials with integer coefficients. It's a problem which is frequently given. Prove that the ideal generated by X is a prime ideal. Normally we prove that if there are two polynomials which belong to this ideal, then a product of two polynomials belongs to this ideal. At least one of them must be here. But now here we shall give a slightly different proof by using the first isomorphism theorem. Consider the function phi going from Zx to Z given by phi of any polynomial equal to f of 0, the value of f at the point 0, namely the constant term of the polynomial. Then what is the kernel of phi? Kernel of phi will be the set of all polynomials such that f of 0 is 0. F of 0 is 0 means x is a factor of the polynomial. So such a polynomial is always divisible by x. So kernel of phi is nothing but the principal ideal generated by the polynomial x. So now what does our first isomorphism theorem give? It tells you that Zx, the quotient ring Zx by x, is isomorphic to Z. But we know that Z is an integral domain, so the left hand side is also an integral domain. So Zx by the principal ideal generated by x is an integral domain, therefore this must be a prime ideal. Okay. Now we are going to prove a very important result. Look at the statement which is written below. A ring with unity contains Z or Zn. It does not contain Z or Zn per se. What it contains is a subring which is isomorphic to Z or Zn. And a field contains a subfield isomorphic to Zp or Q. How do we prove this? We prove it with the help of the first the theorem of ring homomorphism. Let us see this. Supposing R is a ring with unity. R is a ring with unity 1. Define a mapping phi. Define a mapping phi going from Z to R by phi of n equal to n times 1. We can very easily verify that this is a ring homomorphism. Let us see what is its kernel. What is the kernel? We know that kernel is a normal subgroup. A kernel is an ideal of Z. So K phi must be a subgroup of Z. We know that all subgroups of Z are of the form Mz. All subgroups of Z are of the form Mz for some integer m. So K phi is also going to be one such group. Now let us see what happens to be what is K phi. There are two possibilities. The characteristic of R may be a positive integer m, or the characteristic of R may be 0. Supposing characteristic of R is m, then what happens to the kernel? Let us write K phi. Suppose K phi is nz. This is nothing but 0 plus minus n plus minus 2n and so on. N is the smallest integer generating K phi, and so n is the smallest integer such that phi of n equal to 0, that is n times 1 equal to 0. So n is nothing but the additive order of 1. But since the characteristic of R is m, what is the additive order of 1? It is m, so n equal to m. So what have we deduced? If the characteristic of R is m, K phi is mz. Similarly, if the characteristic of R is 0, what will be K phi? In this case, there is no smallest integer m such that m into 1 is 0. So K phi is nothing but singleton 0. Now let us apply the first isomorphism theorem. Phi going from Z to R is a homomorphism of Z into R. What does the first theorem of ring homomorphism say? Z by K phi is isomorphic to phi Z. We know that phi Z is a subring of R. So what happens? There is a subring of R which is isomorphic to Z by K phi. What is Z by K phi? It is nothing but mz in the first case. So Z by mz, which is isomorphic to Zm plus m cross m, is isomorphic to phi Z. So in this case, the ring has a subring isomorphic to Zm. On the other hand, if the characteristic is 0, K phi is singleton 0. So Z by K phi is nothing but Z itself. So in this case, R has a subring which is isomorphic to Z. How will this result be modified if the right hand side happens to be a field? A field always has a unity element. We know that the characteristic of a field is either 0 or prime. Supposing the characteristic of the field is P, then the field has a subring which is isomorphic to Zp. And if the characteristic is 0, it has a subring which is isomorphic to Z. But since P is prime, Zp is a field, so in the first case the result is modified. Every field contains a subfield which is isomorphic to Zp. What happens in the next case? Does it contain a field which is isomorphic to Q? In fact, the answer is yes. For that, we define the idea of the field of quotients. Look at your PPT. Suppose the integral domain R is a subring of the field F. Then F dash equal to AB inverse, AB belonging to R, B not equal to 0 is the smallest subfield of F that contains R. F is called the field of quotients of R. Interpret this result in the case of Z and Q. Z is an integral domain. It's a subring of the field of real numbers. Then, what is f dash? Set of all elements of the form a into 1 by b, where b is not 0. So it contains all the quotients or the rational numbers. That is why in the general context also f is called the field of quotients. Now the proof is very simple of this result. This, in fact, this theorem is called Doro extension theorem. You can take any two elements belonging to f dash. Let the two elements be a into b inverse, c into d inverse, where b and d are not equal to 0. Our goal is to prove that a into b inverse minus c into d inverse also belongs to f. Do in the working column some elementary simplification like you do in school algebra. The first element is a by b, second element is c by d. If you have to take common multiply and then denominator and simplify, you will write it as ad minus bc into bd the whole inverse. This is exactly the same. See, this is ad minus bc into bd the whole inverse. In the first term, you have a d inverse, dd inverse will give you 1. So, first term is ab inverse. Similarly, second term is bc inverse. Now, this is of the form some element of the ring and a non-zero element of the ring. So, definitely this belongs to f dash. Then to verify that f dash is a field, we have to verify if there are two elements x and y belonging to f dash, y not equal to 0, we have to check that x into y inverse also belongs to f dash, so that the non-zero elements of f dash form a multiplicative group. Now let x be ab inverse and let y be cd inverse. Let us write down what is x into y inverse. This will give us ab inverse d into c inverse. So we can write this as ad into b inverse c inverse or cb inverse. C is not 0, b is not 0, so no 0 divisors, so cb is not equal to 0. So this is of the required format, so this definitely belongs to f dash. So f dash is indeed a field. Then every element of the ring can be thought of as a into 1 inverse, and so every element of R that is contained in definitely contained in f dash. Therefore, f dash is a field which contain a field subfield of f that contains R. Y is a smallest subfield. Whenever the element is of the form a into b inverse, it will definitely belong to f dash. So, any other subfield containing a and b, also any other subfield containing a and b, it also contains a into b inverse. Therefore, f dash is the smallest subfield that contains R. So, it is called the field of quotients of R. Lastly, we will end the lecture. Let me go back to the previous theorem. Please look. A field, if f is a field, it contains a subring which is isomorphic to Zp if its characteristic is P. That means it contains a subfield isomorphic to Zp. In the second case, when its characteristic is 0, it contains a subring which is isomorphic to Z. Then the field of closure of this subring will contain the field of closure of Z. That means if phi Z is the ring which is isomorphic to Z, the field of closure of phi Z contains the field of closure of Z, therefore it contains Q. Lastly, we will end with this. Every integral domain, whether it is a subring of a field or not, can be embedded in a field. What is meaning of embedding a ring in a field? Sometimes what will happen in a field, there may not be solution for a particular equation. So we may want to adjoin something more, so we obtain solutions of equations. In an integral domain, sometimes it may not be possible to obtain a solution. So we are interested in embedding an integral domain in a field. How do we do that? It's almost the same procedure as we would follow by constructing rational numbers from integers. We look at we start with the ring A and form equivalence classes. We consider the set S of all ordered pairs AB, B not equal to 0. We define an equivalence relation by saying AB related to CD if A by B equal to C by D, that is AD equal to BC. We prove that this is an equivalence relation. Consider the equivalence class F, prove that it is a field. And lastly, we show that this is isomorphic to D. In this manner, we can embed an integral domain in a field. So, today what are the things we have seen from the beginning? We have seen the general definition of a ring. Then we have seen various types of rings. We have defined characteristic of a ring. And lastly, we have shown that every ring with unity contains a subring which is isomorphic to either ZP or Z, and every field has a subfield which is isomorphic to either ZP or to Q. Okay. There are some interesting problems which I have brought a collection. If there is time, I will put up these problems for you. I want to tell you what there are some special types of subrings. If you consider the set of all elements of a ring which commute with every other element, that is a subring of R. It is called the center of R. Now I am giving you an exercise problem. Find what is the center of the quaternion ring. What is the problem? What is the center of the quaternion ring? Okay. If you get the answer, you can write to me. I am giving you my email ID. This is prasanna.shanti@gmail.com. So I put for a question to you. The question is, what is the center of the quaternion ring? Thank you.